Right. Hello. And
Fancy opener.
oh my God, I know, I know. Well done to our lovely, lovely producers, Emily and David. Now, welcome to The World Unspun. And this is going to take place every Friday at 5 p.m. UK time. Doug, Eastern time, that is noon, right?
Absolutely. High noon in New York. They're out visiting the Mr. Softy trucks, getting hot dogs from the stands. Busy,
Sounds
busy on the streets.
That sounds lovely. Now, why are we here? It is all David's fault. David, over to you. Can you explain?
I don't know if it's I don't know if it's my fault, but I guess I'll take credit. If it's the fault of anyone, it's the 1,200 PR people, media people, marketing people around the world that are part of the advisory club WhatsApp group. I call it the PR mega chat. Many of you hopefully are already participating in that. Some of you kind of prefer to have it digested for you. And you may know that for a year or so, I've tried to do a weekly summary on LinkedIn, looking at what people thought were the interesting posts and submissions. If you're trying to picture this, it's literally a text chat. There are 24 hours a day, comments, posts, sometimes breaking news about what's happening in the PR world. So I've tried to discern what I thought was most interesting. That's obviously got my filter on it, and I thought it'd be much more interesting to involve some trusted friends and colleagues with Doug and Farzana. And in fact, we were having a conversation in a different setting about the chat. Actually, why don't we just do a live conversation? So this is our first experiment, and thank you everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your midday or your end of day or wherever you are to join us in this conversation. You're free to put comments in the chats. We're going to be talking back and forth, but we'll try to bring your comments forward too, just like we do in the text chat.
Fantastic. And so I'm based in London. David is a Texan in London, and we have Doug Downs based in Canada. So we will be talking about the news across the world, and we'll try not to make it dominated by the UK and North America, which I suspect today will be. Now, breaking news. What
Breaking
is
news.
happening right now immediately? So right now we've just been seeing splattered all over the BBC and other channels. Angela Rayner, resignation and a cabinet reshuffle. And so Doug, we've had a chat about this just before we came live, and Doug was like, "What does she
Who?
do?"
Yeah, but she
Yeah,
is top. This is
who?
top of my Google feed. When I go on
Mhm.
Google, this is top of my feed right now. So this is the news of the moment. Yeah.
So
Who?
I've always been a bit
Politician.
obsessed with
Who?
her.
What'd she do?
But,
What'd she step in? She's resigned? Is that what she's done?
yeah, she has resigned, and basically, it's quite a blow for Keir Starmer because it's
Your
been
prime
rocking.
minister. Yeah.
Yeah, our prime minister, and so it was after revealing that she underpaid approximately about £40,000 in stamp duty on an £800,000 flat in Hove, which is by the sea, and
Okay.
she sort of signposted it was to do misapplied legal advice, and she referenced herself to the independent ethics advisor and stepped down, and that has precipitated a reshuffle. So now we have now our foreign secretary is Yvette Cooper. David Lammy has been promoted to deputy prime minister and justice secretary, and Shabana Mahmood becomes home secretary. And there is a PR story on this because Keir Starmer was somebody that everyone was hoping was going to come to the UK, give us some much needed stability, and I don't think he's quite managed to do that. What's your thoughts, David?
Well, I wonder, is she being held to a different standard, do you think, than if she were a Tory, if she were a male, would she be subject to the same kind of scrutiny? And I guess that's my real question. Is this a PR story, or is this a political story, or is it a little bit of both? And as you think about that, I literally learned about this story from the WhatsApp chat. So that's one little feature of being plugged into to
Mm.
the chat. But what do you think? PR, political,
Can
something
you
else?
separate the two? If it happens in politics, isn't politics just a giant PR exercise these days with good measurement because there's an election at some point?
Yeah, I'm beginning to think that, there was a time when I thought politics was mostly policy wrapped up in good PR. Now I'm beginning
Mm.
to think politics is mostly PR that occasionally touches on policy. But
Okay.
Farzana, you're the one who brought the story to our attention. What do you think?
Do you know what? It is a huge distraction because here in the UK, it's Party Conference Month, and Party Conference Month is where you set the stage for your big policy announcements. You bring anybody, all your activists and your followers and your supporters and the media under the tent, and this is our big direction. So I think timing matters critically in PR, and her resignation is going to be all that everyone talks about, and the reshuffle. And I feel sorry for all of the public affairs teams. All of a sudden, they have to, understand that they have to switch to to other ministers, and this reshuffle right before party conference where the public affairs teams are working incredibly hard. This month we've got Reform and we've got Labour and Conservative, and so all of these, and Lib Dems of course, and so there's going to be all sorts of ramifications on public affairs teams across the land for the upcoming Labour Party conference. Now, I want to say a warm welcome. We have our friend who has joined us, David Alexander. And what does he have to say? He has, as he said in the politics group, Labour is seriously lacking when it comes to charismatic and compelling spokespeople, and Reform have many of them. I think that's true. I was in the green room. I think it was BBC, and I think Nigel Farage was next to me getting his makeup done and his hair, and I was getting my makeup done for two different shows. And I remember observing him, and we didn't say hello or anything like that. And I was observing him, and do you know what? He was so charismatic, and he was chatting to the makeup artist, and and just talking to everybody but me. And I did grudgingly realize that he has got that charisma. And I remember also, back in the day, coming across Boris Johnson had that same charisma, and charisma takes you really far in politics. And do we really vote with our head and our rational lens on policy, or with our, do you know what, I'd like to have a pint with that guy at the pub? And I think so likability really matters in politics. And so David, he's absolutely right. It's about charisma and compelling spokespeople. And in terms of strategy, messaging, and delivery of its comms, Labour is failing, according to David Alexander, and Reform is dominating the agenda despite a lack of MPs. I kind of agree with David. I really do. I think Reform are doing so well in their messaging. I just had a look at the party conference pages across, Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative, and Reform. And just in terms of basic getting information and looking to sign up, I mean, whoever's doing the website, comms of Reform and party conference, they're doing a great job. They're understanding that no one wants to, they want things to be intuitive and easy, and and this attention deficit sort of mindset that we all have. They just want easy messaging, and I kind of think Reform's doing really well. And also, actually, MAGA, the MAGA spokespeople, they totally get it.
You see Anne-Marie Blake's comment here? I think that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Charisma or competence? I mean, we've been asking that for how many years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, no, we want charisma, Anne-Marie. That's how we elect on either side of the pond. It's who connects with people from a populist kind of standpoint. That's kind of where we've gone. How big a deal is this politician? Is this an important politician? Can she just not that lost from cabinet, no big deal, or is this a heavyweight that's disappearing?
Oh, she's a big deal. She's a connection with the left of the party. Incredible story. I mean, for me, she's a little bit like that sort of that princess from Disney's Brave. She's redhaired, fiery, strong, amazing backstories. Single mother. Was living in council housing. And she. I found her really inspiring, actually. And so I think it is a huge loss to the party to have lost her. And, she's not the only minister they've lost. I mean, in quick succession, there's been quite a few, but we must move on. Now, we do have another story, and I'm going to hand it over to our friend in Canada, Doug. Tell us what your neighbor is up to.
Well, so I'm pulling off of this story. This is about 40,000 pounds. What's that? $65,000 in impropriety here. That's the monetary value of this. Good grief. I don't even know if that would register over on this side of the, if it registered, we'd elect them. We'd elect them president, right? So based on that, if you could pop up the photo from Al Jazeera of President Trump at his news conference, to me, this was kind of the story that unraveled through the week. Is he dead? It's like Paul McCartney from the Beatles. Is he dead? Is he walking out of step down the Abbey Road? And Al Jazeera had a neat article there where their perspective was, how did this false rumor spread so widely? And we had Sheoni Lin on the Stories and Strategies podcast about a year and a half ago. A lot of folks on the WhatsApp channel will know Sheoni. Sheoni, for those who don't know her, runs a behavioral science agency. It's not the way she wants to describe that, but that's, sorry, in my terms, that's how I describe it. Brilliant look at behavioral science and how people behave. And she had broken down on the episode how disinformation spreads so rapidly on social media. And within that recipe, not so much what created the disinformation, it's usually something kind of small, but then bots step in and help spread it. But at some point, the accelerant is influencers that have a political or monetary or some other kind of motivation to spread the rumor. And in this case, in the Al Jazeera story, what they're suggesting is, sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Within the story, the journalist's words were liberal-minded influencers, and they named a couple of them on TikTok, the Spahar, and from the Midas Touch podcast, which you can see on YouTube, Ben, I think it's Mysalis. They were two of the ones that helped spread this quite strongly. And I think Rosie O'Donnell actually repeated this as well. But it's the same, from a PR lens, it's the same recipe that influencers who have gained audience, which has surely gained on trust, are part of the culprits who are spreading this disinformation. David, your thoughts on that?
Well, that was going to be my story of the week as well. I'll come back to kind of how it resolved itself. And I think there's another way of looking at this 6-day window where the speculation of whether he was still alive or not was running rampant. And I have no doubt, and I follow Midas Touch, I think there was some kind of fuel thrown on the flames for that. Another way of looking at this, he was literally out of the public eye for 6 days, 5 days, off of social media for 4.5 of those. And that's pretty unlike him. Some of the photos that were distributed by the White House suggesting that he was alive and well were shown to be faked, or if not faked, like a month old. So there was definitely some efforts to fill in the information gap. And I think many parties tried to bend that to their purpose. One explanation was that it was another distraction from the fury over the Epstein files. I think that's a little bit of a stretch in that that's just a lot. But I've come to a belief that there's 3 different things that happen from the White House right now. Some things are literally designed to be distractions from the Epstein debate. Some things I think are just weird and conveniently serve to be a distraction from the Epstein fury. And some things are just weird. And I don't know which one of these it fit into. But the fact that in his press conference, he was 40 minutes late. It was timed to coincide as the leadership of the Russian government, Chinese government, and North Korean governments were meeting. It felt a little staged and
a little
the press
sus.
conference, a little suspicious. So people are going to interpret this the way they want to interpret it, but it did create a lot of speculation. And I guess everybody tried to run with it. I kind of want to go to the press conference, but I don't want to exhaust your story about just.
Well, no. What jumped out at you from the news conference? Did he look sickly to you?
Well, he didn't look great, and like I say, he was late, knowing that most cameras were standing by, waiting to go live. So he did build, whether it was intentional or not, he built optimal drama for it. I thought the parade of praise that came out before he made a fairly innocuous announcement. The whole announcement about moving the Space Command from Colorado
to Alabama.
I'm not saying that's not news, but I don't think it's not usually a live Oval Office press conference. That's usually for like a declaration of war. And then sort of this parade of praise was weird. It's just not usual. So again, I don't know, was that a distraction by design? Was it a distraction by accident, or was it just weird? I don't know. But what struck me, and I will get out of the politics for a moment, just the idea of the press conference. And it seems to be limited now to statements from the government, or a government, or maybe after a big match or game, sporting match or game. I don't know that live press conferences happen that often anymore. And I felt a little bit nostalgic just for the idea. I mean, I'm old enough. I used to worry about press conferences a lot. I think there are probably a lot of people in the business now who've never thought about recommending a press conference, much less organizing one. And I just felt a little bit nostalgic. Again, the design, the setup, the staging, the news itself was not that dramatic, I thought. Nobody mentioned the point, though, that my hometown, I was actually born at Redstone Arsenal Military Hospital in Huntsville, Alabama, which is the place where the Space Command is, and every single journalist missed that point. So make of that what you will.
You got to trek back home, man, to see something down there.
I wanted to bring up just David Alexander just made a really interesting point about, Obama. He was the king of charisma, which allowed him to get things done and get support. What were the differences between how Obama sort of ran his sort of presidential comms versus Trump? It's a huge question. I mean, I tell you why, because I've been really following the White House on their Instagram, and I find it really fascinating. I think they're kind of good. Like you have the MAGA minute, and the MAGA minute is just like literally a minute of here's the top things that have happened. And then when you look at the copy in the Instagram post, they've just got like a little emoticon with like a couple of words for each policy. I mean, it is as top line as you can get. But actually, I think it's probably more likely that that's going to have eyeballs and there's going to be some sort of feeling from the person that something's getting done, rather than a handful of policy wonks that read a 50-page report that comes out 3 months later. I do think that they sort of kind of get immediacy and and how to be as brief as possible. And I can't remember what Obama's sort of comms were like. I can't remember sort of following the White House.
I know a little bit.
Yeah.
I worked for the campaign in a volunteer capacity, and I was a fundraiser for him here in the UK. So I was in pretty early with his style. This is all pre-social media, or at least very early days of social media. So 2007, 2008 wasn't like it is now. But he did understand, obviously, the appeal of cool, and he thought very carefully and presented himself thoughtfully, and he tapped into a lot of kind of popular cultural memes and vibes. It's a sort of pre-meme, but vibes. I think he did get the vibe environment. He just didn't necessarily have the channels that are available now. I think you're right, and as much as it pains me to say, I do think Trump does get popular culture, and he knows definitely how to wire himself into virtually every story. And in fact, he makes every story about him, and he makes it almost impossible to cover anything else because he's got this whole muzzle velocity approach to announcing something new and crazy, or at least new. Sorry, putting my own view in there, but something new and shocking, every day, and it drowns out the rest of the news cycle. And I think that's clever. I'm not saying it's good, but it's clever. And going back to Anne-Marie's comment earlier, I think of course we want to choose competence over charisma, but we're humans and we feel before we think. And I think that's something that as communicators, it's a lesson for us to think about. You think about Gavin Newsom; he's the governor of California, and he's mounted this kind of anti-Trump social media campaign. And many people in the middle and on the left aren't comfortable with that because it feels like, in their views, they're stooping to the same level. I don't know if it's effective or not, but it's gotten Gavin Newsom a lot of attention. It's brought him to the front of the opposition. So I think we just need to accept that charisma is at least as important in people's minds as competence, if not more. And there's not a lot we can do to change that.
David, let me ask you, the last U.S. president elected based on competence, I would suggest, was Jimmy Carter. And that ever since then, every single president, George Bush Sr., I'm not sure what charisma was there, but probably pulling off of Ronald Reagan's incredibly, at least popular, 8 years as president.
Yeah.
I think in U.S. politics anyway, it's been totally style over substance.
Yeah. It's definitely.
Sorry, I am including President Obama in there as well.
I wouldn't disagree. I think it's been style led. I think in Obama's case, he did try to follow through with some policy, but for the most part, it has not been. I don't know where you put Biden in on that. Not a lot of style
It
or
was
substance in the.
anti-style. It was get rid of Trump, right? It was anti-style.
Yeah, it was still kind of drafting off that. So sorry, for seeing something else.
Yeah, so
Joshua.
Joshua here, he has written Trump wins because he is not formulaic. He's not overly edited. He's not rehearsed. God, he's a bit like
He's
us, a bit on the
authentic.
hoof.
He's
He's not
authentic.
perfect because
Yeah,
authenticity is paramount. Americans really want to connect,
they do.
and he does that.
They do. And he's
Yeah, I
touched a
think that's-
vein. He's found a feeling within a lot of people where they feel estranged from the so-called system, where they feel the system has moved beyond them. And it's probably, I don't want the big cities telling me how I should be able to live. That's probably what it drills down to.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I know we don't want to spend the whole show on Trump, but I think this is why the
Oh,
Epstein thing has been. Well, I think it's why it's been hard for him. He wanted so desperately to walk away from the Epstein thing, and I think this is part of the beast that he's helped create, or he's at least been part of. That too is wired into popular culture. I mean, it's shocking, it's horrific, it's everything that people don't want to believe is happening. Trump's been talking about happening in other sections for a long time, and now I think he can't understand why he can't just put that one to rest, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So I do think if you're going to get in the cage with the bear, you're going to have to live with the bear. And I think he thought maybe he was the bear, but that's not the way it's not the way public opinion works. So
I mean, whatever your political leanings, he's a great storyteller. He knows how to connect. He has redrawn the map in political communications. We have a insight from Mr. McEwen being logical, though in politics, charisma is essential to leverage competence. So perhaps it's not one or the other. Perhaps it's kind of both. And he also goes on to say, he tells people what they want to hear. And actually it's, we lean into comfortable conversations, to reinforcing our core beliefs and our sort of suspicions. So maybe it's just human nature, and he just has this incredible instinct to connect and accept humans as we are, flawed beings.
If I tell you what you want to hear, though, I'm not necessarily assisting the advancement of us as a society. At some point, I need to be unreasonable to change things to make them better. No change is ever done without being unreasonable. But
it depends what success looks like. Does success look like winning and being in power? Or is success thinking about other goals,
helping people?
Yeah, right. Now we still have other stories, right? Doug, David, should I dive into one, or is there another angle you want to explore? Because Trump does dominate a bit.
Rattled my cage on Trump, so I don't want to say anything more about that. I think you should say what interested you this week, and I know you went to some interesting places, so I'd like to hear where you were this week.
Yeah, so through the WhatsApp group of David Gallagher and an introduction, I met this incredible guy called Julio Romo, and or Julio Romo. I think the Brits call him Julio and the Spanish call him Julio, and there's people like me who pretend that we're very international. I'm going to try and call him Julio, and he's a super smart guy. He has worked across a number of roles in government and outside, and I was invited to the launch of a soft power report by the Foreign Policy Centre in Westminster, and I thought, who should I take? And he is a great wingman, so we went along, and he's written a fantastic blog about the report on soft power on his LinkedIn, which you could find. And he's also got a fantastic newsletter as well, which I always read. And just a little bit of a framing about soft power. So it was coined by the Harvard scholar Joseph S. Nye Jr. in the late 1980s. Soft power describes the ability to achieve desired outcomes through attraction, not coercion, via culture, values, and policy legitimacy. And he sadly passed away in May 2025, a few months back, at the age of 88. But his legacy of strategic diplomacy endures. Now, if we think about soft power, now, I say from a British lens, BBC, Premier League, Fortnum and Mason. What would you say, Doug, what are the soft power assets for Canada?
I think soft power is probably the strongest power, because it creates an atmosphere where I'm making my own decisions. And even after some reflective thought,
Mm-hmm.
I realize I have made my own decision and that I was not coerced. At most, I was informed and maybe encouraged. So I think of nudges as a form of soft power. To me, that's the strongest form. I don't think we're necessarily living in that world. From politicians, from most big marketing companies, it's much more a form of hard power, and pushing people to the place you want them to be. Because we're in a rush. We don't have time for this soft power crap that could take years.
And what about David? The soft power assets of the US? I'd say Hollywood, obviously, McDonald's.
Hollywood, fast food, or quick serve food, music, increasingly some American sports. Yeah. So, but all that too is being questioned right now, and not trying to drag us back into earlier topics, but there's feelings that maybe some of that's too woke, and which is a bigger discussion, maybe a discussion for a whole show. I would say in U.S. history, it's things like entertainment, professional sports, the military in some ways help create greater social cohesion in the U.S. across races, across sexual orientation, across genders. And all that's being completely, literally dismantled through hard power mechanisms. So, my views on that, but I think we're living really in a really strange time where curves and arcs that have been in motion for decades have suddenly been, record screech stopped. And I don't know what replaces it. And this is not just an American phenomenon. You're feeling it everywhere.
Now, back to the report. We have some photos of the launch, and so this is the report, and we're going to have a link that we'll share to the Foreign Policy Centre report that you can download. The future of the UK soft power and foreign policy, and beautiful Westminster. It's always a joy to go to events there, and so we had representatives from the Premier League. That's John Whittingdale, who's a former culture secretary and also was a former chair of the Select Committee. Susan, she heads the Foreign Policy Centre, and what does the report in essence talk about? So it says it emphasises the importance of a coordinated long-term UK soft power strategy, and it urges a digital gateway to unify educational assets, scientific, cultural, because the UK actually, we've got Oxford, we've got Cambridge, we've got these incredible schools that people from all over the world send their children to. And it's really about not just looking at education as a business and as an export business, but actually looking at it as a soft power. If you go to school in the UK, for instance, or you do a course in the UK, you then have these sort of, positive feelings, hopefully, if you're not offended by the weather. And then later on, when you then go and get a job and get a business and get in a position to invest, perhaps you'll think about investing. And soft power is this incredible area where one connects to another. So sort of like culture, like film, builds a familiarity that then can build to tourism. So you then go and visit more. Tourism can then build to, maybe I'll trade with like somebody from this country, that could then lead to foreign direct investment. So it really does, it's about connecting the dots. And in essence, the report was saying, we need to really harness UK soft power strategy, not take for granted that, we have English that is spoken around the world, and we've got the Commonwealth, and we've got these incredible creative industries, and we need to really think about it strategically. And it sort of asked for 20% sort of government thinking around strategic, and then 80% let the public sector and the private sector just do their thing. And that also includes British charities as well, who are out there. And it's hard because at the moment you've got a lot of international aid budgets, and so that is
I'm glad you're seeing this comment. That comment from Georg, I want to. He's so right. I'm glad he said that. Just the idea. Well, you can read it. Language. I totally agree. I mean, I'm saying this. I'm dual national, so in my adopted home country of England, Great Britain, it has extraordinary, disproportionate power in the world by the virtue that people speak English. And I'm not taking anything away from my fellow citizens of Great Britain, but that is probably the best example of soft power I can think of.
Yeah. Agreed. I just had this conversation yesterday. yesterday with a colleague. We were looking at a map of the world, and they were noting they knew England was an island, right? Or the UK was basically an island, but to see it, to visually see it and see how small it actually is in terms of a footprint. And between us, the comment came up, and yet we all speak the dang language that more or less and that's from accelerated in the Victorian age. You're right. Language is so powerful. And morphing and changing, because Mandarin is becoming more and more spoken, as well as Spanish is spreading rapidly.
We have come to an end. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you for all your comments. We will be back on Friday at 5 p.m. UK time and noon Eastern time. And if there's any stories that you want us to discover, then those in the WhatsApp group, hit us up. And those not, we're all on LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it. We're on there. Reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you. But thank you for our experimental Friday. All the best. And thank you to our producers, David Olajide and Emily Page. They are behind the scenes, and they've been helping with all the tech. So we adore you both. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.